Miguel Brockmann M.M. is a Nicaraguan diplomat, politician, and Catholic priest of the Maryknoll Missionary Society. He was recently nominated as Libyan Representative to the UN, a request which is currently pending, as the President of the United Nations General Assembly from September 2008 to September 2009. He presided over the 63rd session of the United Nations General Assembly. He was also the last UN ambassador for the Libyan Arab Jumeirah. Early life. Descotto was born in Los Angeles, California, in the United States, on February 5, 1933. He was then raised in Nicaragua but was sent back to the United States to begin his high school studies in 1947. Priesthood. Descotto felt called to serve as priest and entered the seminary of the Maryknoll Missionary Society in 1953. He was ordained a priest of the Society in 1961 before engaged in politics. He earned a Master of Science degree from the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism the following year, and was a key figure in the founding of the Maryknoll publishing house Orbis Books. In 1970, he served as an official of the World Council of Churches. As an adherent of liberation theology, he secretly joined the Sandinistas. Descotto formed the Nicaraguan Foundation for Integral Community Development in January 1973 to promote a non-governmental response to the displacement of thousands in the December 1972 Managua earthquake. Today, he continues as president of FUNDECI, which operates in several departments in Nicaragua. On August 5, 2014, the Vatican announced that Pope Francis had reinstated Descotto as a priest after he had been suspended for 30 years for taking up office in Nicaragua's left-wing Sandinista government. Descotto had been banned from celebrating Mass by Pope John Paul II for defying a church ban on priests holding government jobs. Descotto served as Nicaragua's foreign minister from 1979 to 1990. He welcomed the news and said his punishment had been unfair. Descotto, 81, had written to Pope Francis asking to be allowed to celebrate Mass before he dies. Nicaraguan Civil War. Descotto first publicly expressed support for the FSLN as one of Los Dos in October 1977, and was appointed foreign minister after the Sandinista triumph in 1979. He served as foreign minister in Daniel Ortega's FSLN government from 1979 to 1990. During a visit to Central America, Pope John Paul II publicly admonished him for his political activity. In 1985, the Pope denounced him and two other priests, the brothers Ernesto and Fernando Cardinal. All three served in the Nicaraguan government but did not resign from office, and so in violation of church law. Descotto was suspended by the Vatican in 1985, together with the two other priests. The suspension stayed in place until August 2014, when Pope Francis lifted it. Early in the war, the Reagan administration perceived Descotto as a relative moderate who might break with the regime. While foreign minister, he received the Lenin Peace Prize for 1985 and 1986 and the Thomas Merton Award for 1987. In 1999, then Archbishop of Managua, Cardinal Miguel y Bravo, criticized the priests who became involved with the Sandinistas and abandoned the priestly ministry for politics. He said the priests never denounced the injustices that took place at the time. Political activity. On March 3, 1986, Descotto gave a speech on Nicaraguan television publicly insulting and condemning Obando for not siding with the Sandinista regime against the Contras. There is no word uttered by human mouth, no adjective that we could use to truly describe the horror produced by this brother of ours. After the Sandinistas lost the Nicaraguan general election 1990, Descotto led the communal movement but resigned that post in December 1991 after his support within the organization waned. He has supported Ortega against the Sandinista renovation movement dissidents. United Nations President of the General Assembly, GRULAC selected him as the candidate to become the President of the UN General Assembly. On June 4, 2008, he was elected by acclamation to preside over 63rd session of the United Nations General Assembly from September 2008 to September 2009. Shortly after his election, Descotto stated during a press conference, "They elected a priest, and I hope no one is offended if I say that love is what is most needed in this world, and that selfishness is what has gotten us into the terrible quagmire in which the world is sinking, almost irreversibly, unless something big happens." This may sound like a sermon. Well, okay. Descotto also stated that addressing rising energy and food prices around the world would be priorities. His other priorities would include hunger, poverty, climate change, terrorism, human rights, disarmament, nuclear control, cultural diversity, the rights of women and children and the protection of biodiversity. Descotto designated 16 senior advisors: Brother David Andrews, C.Sc., Maud Barlow, Mohammed Bedjawi, Leonardo Boff, Kevin Cahill, Francois Foutat, Noam Chomsky, Ramsey Clark, Richard Falk, Michael Kennedy, Eleanora Kennedy, Olivier de Schutter, Joseph Stiglitz, Sir John E. Sulston, Francisco Licayo Parajon and Howard Zinn. In June 2010, Descotto was elected by acclamation to the Council Advisory Committee to the United Nations Human Rights Council. Reform of the United Nations. Brockmann has criticized the veto power wielded by the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. I hope my presidency will address what has become a universal clamor all over the world for the democratization of the United Nations. I promise to give full support to the working group on the revitalization of the General Assembly. Relations with the United States. Described by Reuters as a fierce critic of the foreign relations of the United States, because of Reagan and his spiritual heir George W. Bush. The world today is far less safe and secure than it has ever been. Following his election to the presidency of the United Nations General Assembly, he offered a statement interpreted as renewed criticism aimed at the United States. The behavior of some member states has caused the United Nations to lose credibility as an organization capable of putting an end to war and eradicating extreme poverty from our planet. He denounced what he called acts of aggression, such as those occurring in Iraq and Afghanistan. Quote, however, he expressed his love for the United States as a country, and added, "I do not want to turn this General Assembly presidency into a place to take it out on the United States." Reacting to those comments, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Zalmay Khalilzad responded, "We have been assured that a page has been turned and that he understands his new responsibilities. We will wait and see." Richard Grenell, spokesman for the U.S. Permanent Mission to the United Nations, added, "The President of the General Assembly is supposed to be a uniter. We have made it clear that these crazy comments are not acceptable, and we hope he refrains from this talk and gets to work on General Assembly business." Quote, however, Mark Kornblau, spokesman for the United States Mission to the United Nations, said, "It's hard to make sense of Mr. Descotto's increasingly bizarre statements." Relations with Israel and Iran. On September 17, 2008, Israel's ambassador to the UN Gabriela Shalev called Descotto an Israel hater because Descotto hugged Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad after Ahmadinejad's strongly anti-Israel and anti-Zionist September 2008 speech to the UN General Assembly. She expressed anger over the UN reception of Ahmadinejad, saying to an Israeli newspaper, "I heard that the Iranian president's address was followed by loud applause, and that Descotto warmly embraced him." Descotto's spokesman responded by saying, he cannot respond to each and every speech made by the leaders of these states. The Israeli ambassador also criticized Descotto for attending a dinner marking the end of the Islamic fasting month of Ramadan with a number of Middle Eastern leaders, including Ahmadinejad. Descotto's spokesman responded by saying, "Will join the dinner because he believes in dialogue, an issue which he had highlighted, and thinks that he should deal with all member states." Libyan ambassador. On the 29th of March 2011, during the 2011 Libyan civil war, Libyan Foreign Minister Musa Kosu wrote to United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, nominating him as Libya's new ambassador to the UN. The letter stated that he was nominated as Ali Abdusalam Treki, also a former General Assembly president who was Libya's first choice, was denied a visa to enter the United States under United Nations Security Council Resolution 1973. U.S. Ambassador Susan Rice claimed he does not have the proper diplomatic visa to represent Libya and suggested Musa Kosu's recommendation may be void because of his resignation on March 30. For the Libyan government,